John Gill, Exposition of the Bible. We're in Revelation chapter 1, verse 13. Reading the verse first from the King James Bible, quote, "And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle." Unquote. John Gill, quote, "And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, by whom is meant not an angel, for he speaks of himself as a divine person, as the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, phrases not applicable to any created beings, and of himself also as having been dead, which angels are not capable of, and of living again, and of living for evermore, and having power over death and the grave, which no creature has. Yea, he calls himself expressively the Son of God." Revelation chapter 1, verse 11. So that Christ is manifestly designed, who, as a divine person, appeared in a form like the individual human nature, which was at his Father's right hand, for that human nature of his, and he, as the Son of Man, was not in the midst of these candlesticks or churches, but he, the Son of God, was in a form like into his human nature in heaven. So before his incarnation, he is said to be like unto the Son of Man. See Daniel's chapter 7, verse 13, to which there is a reference here, and not only in this, but in some other parts of the description. So after his ascension, he in a visionary way appears, not in that real human nature he assumed, but in a form like unto it, that being in heaven, but when he was here, he on earth, he is called the Son of Man, and not like to one, though even such a phrase may express the truth and reality of his humanity. For who more like to the Son of Man than he who is so? See John chapter 1, verse 14. Now Christ was seen by John in the midst of the candlesticks or churches, and among whom he walked, as in Revelation chapter 2, verse 1, which is expressive of his presence in his churches, and which he has promised unto the end of the world, and of the gracious visits he makes them, and the sweet communion and conversation he indulges them with, to their joy and comfort, as well as the walks he takes among them for his own delight and pleasure, and where he is, abides and takes his turns, particularly as a priest, in which form he now appeared as the antitype of Aaron the high priest. To him the lamps or candles in the candlesticks, to cause them to burn more brightly and clearly. Clothed with a garment down to his foot, which some understand of the righteousness of Christ. This is a garment, a wedding garment, the best or first robe, the robe of righteousness, and it fitly compared to one, it being unto and upon believers, put upon them, and which covers their persons, keeps them warm and comfortable, and beautifies and adores them. It is a very beautiful, pure, and spotless robe, and reaches to the feet, covers all the members of Christ's mystical body, the meanest and the lowest, as well as the more excellent, the weakest believer as well, and as much as the strongest, but not Christ mystically, but personally, is here represented. Others therefore think that this long garment is a sign of gravity and wisdom, it being usual for men of power and authority and learning, as the Jewish Sanhedrin, scribes and Pharisees, to wear long garments, but it seems rather to design a priestly robe. A robe of the ephod worn by the high priest is called by this name in the Septuagint version of Exodus chapter 28, verse 4. And so it is by Josephus, who, speaking of the Hyacintine tunic, or robe of blue, says is a garment down to the feet, which in our language is called meir. Rather, it should be lym, meil, which in its Hebrew name. And so this robe is expressed by the same word here, used by Philo the Jew, and by Jerome. So Muhammad says the length of the garment was to the top of the heel, and in the habit of a priest did Christ now appear. And so he is described in his priestly office, in the midst of his churches, having made atonement for their sins by the sacrifice of himself, and now as their high priest had entered into the holiest of all with his own blood and righteousness, bore their names on his breastplate, appeared in the presence of God on their account, and ever lived to make intercession for them. And girded about the paps with the golden girdle, as the high priest was, with the girdle of the ephod, which was made of gold, of blue, purple, scarlet, and fine twined linen. Exodus 28:8. And with which the priests were girded about the paps or breasts, as Christ is here described. It is said of the priests in Ezekiel 44:18, they shall not gird themselves with anything that causes sweat. Some render in sweating places. And so some Jewish writers interpret it, which will serve to illustrate the present place. Says Rabbi Abai, upon citing Ezekiel 44:18, they do not gird themselves in the place in which they sweat. According to the tradition, they gird themselves, they do not gird neither below their loins nor above their armholes, but over against their armholes. The gloss says, upon the ribs, against their armpit, that is, about their breasts or paps, and which is more plainly expressed by the Targum on the above place, which paraphrases it thus, they shall not gird upon their loins, but they shall gird. So Josephus says the high priest's garment was girded about the breast a little below the armholes. Christ's girdle as a king is a girdle of faithfulness and righteousness, which is above his loins, and his girdle as a prophet is a girdle of truth. But as a priest is the girdle of love, it is which has constrained him to put himself in the room instead of his people, to assure their nature, give himself a sacrifice for them, and intercede on their behalf. This is like a girdle, round from everlasting to everlasting. It is said to be golden, because the excellency, purity, glory, and duration of it, and because it is very strong, affectionate, and hearty. It is hid to be a girdle about the paps, near where is the heart, the seat of love, and this may also denote the power, strength, and readiness of Christ to assist and help his church in every time of need. End of John Gill, Revelation chapter 1, verse 13.